The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to our BizLaunch Strategic Planning webinar, What is an Ultimate Business Plan? We are pleased to have you with us here today. My name is Tara Palacios, and I have Joe Clark from SCORE with us this morning. And this is a follow-up to some business planning workshops that we've been doing, some starting a business workshops. We've got another webinar that will be coming up on October 21st on the financials. But we really wanted to go into the depths of business planning, really get into the weeds, figure out what a strategic plan should look like. And I couldn't think of anyone better to be able to share this topic with than my friend Joe Clark. With that said, we'll get into some information, some logistics about today's program. Just so that you're all aware, all attendees will be placed in listen-only mode until the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. If you do have a question during the webinar, please feel free to type your question in the chat window. So even if we don't get to it right away, we will at the end, and make sure that you send us any questions that you may have. Those chat questions will be moderated at the very end of the webinar by Arlington's very own Melissa O'Connor. And we will be recording today's presentation, and we'll have it available on our BizLaunch website under our resources page by the end of the week. We'll send you the link with the information as soon as it's up. That said, if you have any additional questions regarding business planning or anything related to your business and would like to make an appointment with us, feel free to call us at our main phone line at 703-228-0808. Or you can email me at tpalacios@arlingtonva.us. So that's a bit about the logistics for today. And, of course, there's myself, Tara Palacios. I'm the director for BizLaunch. It's my pleasure to have you all with us today, and my pleasure to introduce you to our business plan guru. I should have put that in there. Right. Joe Clark. I've known and worked with Joe since about 2005. He's been a wonderful addition to BizLaunch through SCORE with business counseling. We've seen and worked with several thousand, I want to say, businesses throughout the years, different industry sectors. And there's some things that we see that we know look great. There's things that we work with businesses on to improve. And whenever I think of anyone that is a great counselor in the DC metro area, it is Joe Clark. With that said, just one other thing to think about. Please follow us on Twitter. Lourdes and myself will be live tweeting as Joe is going along. So if you have resources, and we'll try to share information as we go through, we'll put that up under BizLaunch at. With that said, my friend Joe Clark will get this lunch hour started by talking about all things in regards to your business.
Thank you, Tara. I appreciate the introduction. Just so people can get some idea of context, let me give a couple of seconds on my background. I've been involved with small businesses for a number of years. I started my own business and shut that one down back in the 80s. I've been with Fortune 500 companies. I've also been as an employee of small businesses. We grew a small business from about 9 people when I joined to 150 people. We were doing IT consulting services. I've also been involved in very large companies where I'm selling to the commercial world as well as the federal market. So I've seen a lot of operations of businesses and how you have to plan your business and plan what you're trying to do. I've seen it both from the large company and from the small business point of view. I've been with SCORE now for about 6 years, I think it is, doing counseling work. And as Tara said, I've seen a number of thousands of customers that have come in. And I get a lot of the work where people say, I've been told I need to have a business plan, and how do I do that? Or they give me their draft of their business plan, and I take a look at that for them and help them improve that. I also teach our workshops on how to write a business plan, and I focus on the financial aspects of that, which we'll cover in the second of these webinars. So just by way of background, I've been involved with businesses. I've been involved with writing business plans and reviewing business plans. And what we're going to talk about today is really a highlight of that, trying to talk about the type of things that people come up with, the type of things they need to be considering when they're doing a business plan. That's what I was hoping to cover today. On the next slide, what I'd like to cover this afternoon is just, first of all, let's define what do we mean when we say a business plan. What does that refer to? Get into a little bit of the background on why do you go about even creating this, and then what type of format it should take. But the majority of my time I like to spend on this last part of the business planning process. And that's where it's critical to understand what's involved in creating and doing the business planning and putting that together and doing that in a way that you come up with consistent, meaningful results that you then use to manage your business. So that's what we're going to try and cover during this session, and then we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. All right, so if that's good, let's go ahead and start in. When we talk about what do we mean when we say a business plan, and I've found over the years that many people have different ideas of what they consider to be a business plan. The primary thing that people think about is the 20 or 30-page artifact that they have to produce and hand over to somebody. And that certainly is a business plan, but it really is only the physical attribute that comes out at the end of the whole process. In doing a business plan, the purpose of what a business plan does is it helps you lay out what it is that you plan to do with your business. What's your game plan for taking this and moving it forward? So in order to do that, you have to understand what are your objectives, where are you going with this, what goals do you have, how are you laying this all out, what are you trying to do, and then you have to express that or think of that in the context of what are the constraints that you're operating under, both for the market but also operational constraints. What resources do you have available, what finances are available, and then how are you going to figure out what you're going to do with those resources, assuming limited resources. I don't have many people come in with unlimited resources that can do whatever they want.
Oh, no?
No, not normally.
I wish I knew those people.
So most of you are trying to make informed decisions on what to do with the resources that you have, how's the best way of using it, and how to set that all up. The other part of what you're doing in a business plan is really you're starting to think of what happens if something goes wrong. What are the risks? What are the things that might go different than you originally thought would happen? And what actions are you going to be taking care of? The idea on this is a business plan is a stress reduction tool. If you have thought about what's going to happen if sales aren't strong, or if you've thought about if your supplier is going to increase your cost and what impact that will have, then you're going to sleep a lot better at night. You'll have given some the thought to this, you'll have a contingency plan ready, and you'll be ready to take actions if those things, those nasty things do materialize. So it's a stress reducer in that you're going to feel a lot more comfortable as you're going through, and there's a lot of unknowns that may be happening. Now, a couple of other mechanical things in this is if you're going for financing, then you better have in your business plan very clearly defined how you're going to pay that money back and have that available and be able to show your lender that you have the resources that are going to be able to do this, and also show that you have backup plans on different alternatives that you're going to follow if you do have to then come up with alternate resources. So basically, a big part of what the business plan is it's your thought process. It's what you've looked at your situation, you've analyzed it, you've looked at a lot of possibilities, what may be happening, and this is your plan for how you're going to run the business and what you're going to do. You use it to communicate to people, to the audiences, what your plans are going to be. Now, your audience may vary. The audience may obviously be the lender, but it may also be the landlord who says, I'm willing to sign a lease if I understand what you're trying to do.
That's right.
A couple of other people that are your audience are your suppliers. Also, the one to keep in mind is your friends and family. You should be trying to identify and let your friends and families know what it is you're trying to do and how you're planning to go about running this business. And that's an important part of communicating to those people that are involved in this, either as your support group or as people who are going to be directly impacted by what you're doing. So the bottom line is a business plan is really just capturing your thought process on how you plan to run this business. All right, now let's get into a little bit of the why you wouldn't necessarily, what's going to force you to do it. And I've listed the different items, different drivers that may tell you that, hey, I need a business plan. The one at the very end, where the bank or the investor is the one most people think about first. You know, they are doing a business plan because somebody else said, show me your business plan. Well, some gatekeeper has said, I won't talk to you until I see your business plan. But what I really find is that any business needs to focus on these other items also. The business plan is your opportunity to get your act together, to think about what it is that you're trying to do, laying out what your objectives are, figuring out what's going on with the market. So it forces you to do research to find out what the market is looking for, who's the competition, and how you're going to position yourself. It also makes you lay out some goals that have measures associated with them. So some people come in and say their plan and objective is to run the business for 2 years and see if they still have money left. That's not necessarily a very good plan nor very good metrics for it. What you want to be doing is have specific goals that by such and such a point you expect to accomplish ABC. And then lay that out and record that, because I'll guarantee you that 3 months from now you won't remember the details of that sales projection. And you're going to have to really come back here and measure your progress against something that you've laid out and documented. So it's a whole process of it forces you to go through the analysis and lay out a plan for how you're going to try and run your business, and then figure out how you're going to measure your progress. The other part of this is that you then do analysis of not only your own strengths and weaknesses, but your competitors' strengths and weaknesses, and also what are the outside threats or opportunities that are going on, so that you can understand what may happen and what actions you're going to take if those risks do materialize. The other part that I really find important here is that you're going to not have infinite resources, so you're going to have to figure out what's the best way of using those resources. And this allows you then to set some priorities. So you can say, here, this is my main goal right now is to get sufficient inventory that I'm able to handle the heavy season. So that's going to be your priority, and you can focus on that. The one thing I find most small businesses get hit up with is there's 1,000 possible things that they could do. And there will be many vendors offering you many ways that you can spend your limited resources.
Yeah.
A business plan gives you the ability to set priorities and focus in on, keep yourself on strategy for those things that are really going to be important to you, as opposed to chasing all the various possibilities. The other thing that I find is extremely important in setting up this whole planning process, even if you don't need financing from anybody else, you need to have some milestones set, some goals set, that I plan to do $500,000 worth of sales 6 months into this business. And I'm going to lay that out and say, here's how I'm going to measure my progress. Those milestones are extremely critical for helping you identify how you're doing. You definitely want to be doing mid-course corrections where you reach interim milestones, see how you're doing, and then correct to get yourself back on track or reestablish a new set of milestones. Those are all part of the business plan process and a big part of what you're trying to lay out with this. All right, then as I said earlier, the bank and the investors, the gatekeepers, to me are of secondary importance, but they are critical, and they will require you to produce some document that's in a format that they're comfortable wanting to look at and can easily digest. Typically, when we talk to underwriters, we find out most underwriters will spend less than 15 minutes on anybody's business plan. And that's it, in the complete review of things, looking at every part of it, and making a yay-nay type of decision based on what they've seen. That tells you a couple of things. One, it tells you to make sure you're pretty concise, focus in on exactly the important parts related to the business and not perhaps the product or technology that you're selling. That's a difficult focus for most business owners. They're enthralled with their own products, and they want to describe that in tremendous detail. What the investors are really interested in is how the business is going to run and how you're going to manage all of that. So it's a matter of focus is one thing. The other thing is you've got to be able to nail this down and be pretty concise about it. And that typically means you have to do your draft and then rewrite it and rewrite it to get something that is extremely concise and to the point. Don't ramble on. If you are going to be putting a whole bunch of additional information, separate that out as an appendix. But give the gatekeeper a document that's very tight and very well focused toward their area of interest. If it's a banker, their area of interest is going to be getting that loan repaid. If it's an investor, their area of interest is what's my return on investment and how fast can I recoup that? How big is the market and how's it going to grow? Different audiences have different things that they're looking for, and you have to make sure that you're putting something together that communicates for what their interests are.
This almost sounds like you need to have a different business plan depending on what your needs are. Like if you're going for investment or going for leasable space. Is that right, Joe?
Yeah, I express it a little bit differently than that, where I go on and saying the business process, the planning process is the same regardless of to whom you're presenting this. Mm-hmm. But what view of it, what aspect of it you report out is highly dependent upon the audience that you're giving it to. And so it may be exactly the same analysis, but you may include details on the lease in one that you wouldn't include in another one.
Gotcha.
So if you tailor it for the individual. And the flip side on that is if you hand something that covers everything and give it to everybody, mm-hmm. they're never going to read it, and you'll be on the 15-minute point.
If you didn't have them at hello, right?
Right. You lost their attention, and now they're off on to the next person. So you've got to give something that's directly focused to their interests and their needs.
Okay.
All right, so why don't we go into the next part, just to talk about the format. And there are probably, I would say, at least a dozen different formats for business plans that you'll come across. And I'm really not too concerned about which one you pick. What I am concerned about, there are some basic aspects that need to be communicated. How you put that together doesn't really make that much of a difference. But you want to give the audience something that they're comfortable with, that they expect. They want to look for different parts of this. You've got to make sure that you make it easy for them to find that. Mm. So things like just some general things, a cover letter, something that transmits this and talks about a short, concise, one-page cover letter that quickly highlights what it is you're trying to do. I would have a non-disclosure in there because you are going to have to expose some personal information, and while it may not hold people's feet to the fire if they disclose things, you're at least putting them on notice that you don't want this information set around to everywhere. Mm. Table of contents, obviously, just give them the way to look at it, but the big thing that I would hit on is the executive summary. And the executive summary is the last thing that you prepare. And it has to be no more than a page or two. It has to be extremely tight and very concise and well written and rewritten and rewritten. And it's basically your sales pitch. It's saying, here's what my business idea is, here's what it's going to do, and why this is going to be something that you should go into looking at more detail on. And if you don't capture their attention on that one, you're probably not going to get any further review. So most likely the reviewer will look at that, decide whether or not they're going to put the effort into looking at anything else.
So this one, you really have to make sure it's tight.
And you have to make sure that you really gotten it concise, but then also you need to have tested it out on a number of different people. People who know or people who have that type of perspective, whether it's for the investor or the lender, whomever it is you're presenting this to. Try it out on other people, because what's clear to you is probably not going to be clear to everybody else. So get some review on this, get some feedback on this. Obviously, that's an area that SCORE can help you out with on that. So the executive summary is probably the most important thing up there. All the rest of this are just a general type of content that you need. You need to talk about what the company is, what's your vision, where are you trying to go, what do you plan to do with this company, an overview of how long you've been in business, what type of model you have. Are you going to be a freshly grown new business? Are you taking over an existing one? Are you a franchise? Give people a context of what it is that you're doing and how you're moving forward. Then you want to be talking about what it is that you're offering and the market analysis that makes you say that this is a viable fit, that this is something that you're going to be doing well. And one thing, that the key aspect in this part is what we call the value proposition. The value proposition is a three-part statement that you need to be preparing. The first part is saying what is the problem that you are solving, and it has to be expressed from the customer's point of view. The second part of it is who's the target market, who wants this and most. And then the third is what differentiates you from the competition. Now, you may have multiple value propositions. Certainly a small business should not have a dozen of these, but you should have at least one clearly articulated value proposition, and you may be offering to, for example, you may have a product or service that you're offering. You might be offering it to retailers, which will have its own value proposition, and you might be offering it to consumers on your company's website. That'll have a different value proposition. You need to have thought that through and identified that. So that's the biggest part of what I would see for the products and services aspect. That then is looking at market, touching on that, you have to answer the question of the market analysis and who else is out there and what are they doing well that you're going to work against, and what are they doing poorly that you're going to take advantage of. And how are you setting things up so as you put together your plan to market this, that you're articulating the value proposition most effectively. Now, the marketing is, the old saw of build a better mousetrap and everybody will beat a path to your door is pretty much garbage. You really need to be putting the effort in to get out there and let the world know about what you have and how your product is better than the competition. You have to lead them to your door. They're not going to find it on their own. But all the activities that you're talking about doing, how do I get the word out? How do I let people know about this? How do I find the right marketing channels to use? Those are all aspects of what you're describing in that part of the plan. Then putting that all together and talking about how you're going to operate your business all will drive to the financial statements and the financial plan that you have to be able to show your investors or approvers. Here's what I'm going to sell. Here's the quantity of these that I'm going to be selling, how much it's going to cost to do that, and what are the bottom line? What is the I need to see your balance sheet, I need to see your cash flow statement, and I need to see your profit and loss statement. And then that tells you things about how fast you're going to break even, as well as how do you compare against your competitors in the form of financial ratios. So that's the type of information that goes into that financial plan. Then the last item is just everything else. Anything else that you think is important, you can put in there, but you've got to be careful to make sure it's relevant to the business of what you're doing and not just the technology. Let me explain what I mean. I made this reference earlier, and let me be a little bit clearer. I had a person that was doing an alternative form of medicine, what she was planning to sell. She gave me an executive summary that was 36 pages long.
Whoa.
That had all the history of this branch of medicine going back to the time of the Greeks.
Uh-oh.
And told me all this tremendous detail, but spent very little or almost no time telling how she was going to manage her business, how she was going to market it, how she was going to make sales, what staffing she would do. My point being, she was focused in on the product that she was offering, and she was very centric on that. The investors really aren't looking for that. They're looking for how are you going to run the business, how are you going to structure the business, how are you going to control the risk. That's the stuff they want to see. She missed the boat on that. And that's what you want to avoid. And you want to pull any of that very interesting information out of your business plan and use it as an appendix if you feel that that's important information for them to have.
Kind of
as
like a
background.
historical background.
Absolutely, yeah.
The business.
But make sure the business plan itself is tightly focused in on the business aspects of what you're talking about.
That is important. I think sometimes we get caught up with topics
Right.
that we like, we feel passionate about it, but really understanding our end market, end user,
And the
people that are going to
The poster child for doing it wrong is the IT industry, my industry.
Ah.
We always were worried. We focused on the bells and whistles of the capability of what we were doing, and not on the business aspects. So that's what you want to avoid here. This business plan has got to be on the business that you're offering and not on the technology or the background.
That makes sense.
All right, what I thought I'd do to try and pull this all together is walk through a slide on building the business process plan, the business planning process rather. Well, can you hold off on that? Will you go back on that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to build it as I talked.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Not a problem.
You guys didn't see that.
So now,
Defined product.
everybody, when you're putting together your plan, you can think about what is the product or service. Doesn't matter whether it's a product or service. There's something you're offering that you think other people are going to be willing to pay you money for. So you have to define that and put together your best understanding. This is the part in the value proposition that says, what is the problem you're solving? What are you doing for your customers to make their life better? And that's what you're trying to focus on. Now, the next part of this, next step,
All right.
comes in. Not everybody is going to want that. There are going to be some people who will want it more than others. And your idea, your challenge is to say, if I've got limited resources for marketing this, what group of the market is going to want this more than anybody else? Doesn't mean you won't sell it to somebody else, but you want to focus in on who is the key market that for which your product or service is going to do the most good. Next thing you're going to do is you realize that there is competition out there. There are other people who will be able to offer something like what you are offering, or it may be, think of it this way, if somebody else, if your customer has a number of choices on where they spend their money, that's all competition to you. So you want to be thinking about, for this customer and from their view of the world, who else is offering something out there that may take the money that they have available to spend. Now, given that identification of the competition, the next thing you do is you lay out a plan that says, all right, given all this, how am I going to get the word out that says, Here's what I've got to offer. Here's why this is important and why you should buy from me. Now, conceptually, if you've thought that through and you've done that work, the next thing that happens is that you can project a number of sales that you're going to make by when. And this seems to be the point that most people get stuck up on and have the most difficult time. How do I come up with a projection? It's feeling like, well, I'm going to guarantee that this is the amount of sales I'm going to do.
That's right.
I suggest you step back from that and think of it more as targets. And these are what I would like to do if my plan works, if everything is proper, then, and this all gets executed, here is the amount of sales I would expect to make. And so I have a target that I'm going to measure my progress against versus a promise of what you will be doing. And that seems to get people past that stumbling point. So think of how many of these things, product or service, I can sell by when. If you put that list together, then the next step basically falls together where you can put together a operations plan, hours of operation, when I'm going to sell, how I'm going to sell it. I can have an organization that will help me make decisions and control, keep my organization on track. From there, I can identify what resources are needed to reach that level of sales projection. And putting that together then allows me to create the finances, and I can say whether or not how much money this is going to take, how much is it going to cost to sell that many units. From that, you can determine what the profit or loss is. Now, you're going to go through this process and you think it through, and you get to this point, and you look at your bottom line. Typically, what's going to happen is either you're going to be operating at a loss, which is not good.
No.
And you're going to say that this is costing me too much. Or perhaps the other way around is that it's a huge profit, but the resources that you're going to require to do that are beyond your reach. So you're going to have something about it that's not right. The very first time through, you're going to have to modify, and that process loops you back up, and you go back in. Now, the key factor here is you've got to make sure you go through the whole loop again, because some people will say, "Oh, I'll just cut my sales," and they skip they skip any of the marketing or any of the rest of that, and they're out of sync. So they're now got a sales number that doesn't match up with the marketing or anything else. You have to go back up, and you may need to redefine your product. You may have to put in different features that limit it to a local market only, or you may be broadening it by adding the new feature or capability so it will appeal to a wider market. You need to be thinking this thing through and go through all the steps to make sure that all of your component parts of the business plan are consistent with the rest of it. And it's that looping through, that iterative process, that is what you really have to practice and work on to get to the point where you can get your aha moment, which is I come up with a plan that seems to be doable with the resources that I have available.
Now, Joe, how long does this process take?
It's going to vary depending upon your situation and what your knowledge of everything is. But a typical business plan, I would say in 2 to 3 weeks, you should have enough research to be able to pull all this together and get to that aha moment.
Okay.
Now, at that point, you lock at it. You take that model and you lock it and you say, here is what I'm planning to do. And that lets you then write your business plan to the point where you now have some context. So, for example, I now know how many customers I'm trying to get. I now know how big of a market, what share of the market I'm doing. And I can write my business plan with specific information as opposed to, we're going to do a great product and everybody will want to buy it.
That's too general.
That's a little bit too general.
Too general, okay.
Now, the next thing on this that I want to point out is nomenclature that you hit. So this is where these different parts that people talk about for a business plan fit in. For example, the value proposition, which I talked about earlier, defines what it is, the product, the service, what problem you're solving, who's the target market, and what differentiates you from that target market, from the competition. The target market basically identifies you and in context of the competition, who you're going against, who are they looking at, what are their strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats for the competitors, to be able to identify what campaigns you're going to employ to get the word out. For example, if my target market is 20-year-olds coming to a restaurant, I'm not going to buy an ad in the newspaper. That's not going to get ever seen.
Right.
So I want to pick things. Each market will have a different way that they want to be approached. And I've got to try to use that to devise the marketing campaigns that I will follow. That will give me my sales projection, again, the target of sales that I'm aiming for, and that will then come up with all my operational aspects. Now, in putting together that financial analysis, you're really talking about the three statements you need: profit loss, cash flow statement, and the balance sheet. Those three are the minimum statements that you need to show what this business is going to look like. You then will do a calculation of how long could this business be running before it reaches a expected break-even point, where all my fixed and variable costs are covered and the company starts making a profit. It's also called the zero profit point. Finally, from there, with that information in place, I can do financial benchmarks, financial ratio benchmarks, and compare myself to other businesses to say, is it reasonable? Am I carrying too much debt? Am I expecting my advertising costs to be, am I putting in enough for advertising? I can answer many questions by doing the financial ratios and comparing myself to the rest of the world. And the final parts are, how much money do I need to get the doors open for business, and where am I planning to get that money from?
That seems very clear. I mean,
and the business plan really is an exercise in clarity. It's very simple. It's not rocket science, unless that is the business that you're offering. But it's simple stuff. It's easy to do, and it's a matter of keeping your focus on it and making sure you're talking about what makes sense, and don't get dragged down into the weeds of all the details of what it is that you're offering that aren't really relevant to the question.
Because then this makes it transferable to other people that pick up the document and they may not know you.
Right. And you have to give them something in a format that they're expecting so that they will know where to find things, but then also talk about only those aspects of the business that are germane to their decision. So you don't hit them with a whole bunch of other stuff, because all you'll do is distract them or make it to the point where they don't even bother to review anymore.
Okay. You want to make sure you hold people's attention.
Right. But you're right. It is a very logical, straightforward process. It's not something that is overly complex.
No.
All right. Well, let me turn to you, if you don't mind, Tara, and talk about some of the resources that are available to people as they're going through this process.
Yeah, and I think looking at the chart, Joe, that you had before, it just lays out where you have your target market, where you have your SWOT analysis. The cool thing that we offer here at Arlington County is through Arlington County Library, there are premium sites that you could visit where you can access and get a lot of this information for free. The hyperlinks that you see here, when we send the presentation, you'll be able to go to them. But in these hyperlinks, a lot of the market intelligence, the business intelligence that's out there are available to you to help you populate. Many times you'll find that this type of information comes at a cost, $2,000, $10,000. Well, in Arlington, we have it for free if you have an Arlington County Library card. And we have a market research webinar that's up on our website as well that goes through how to access that information. The cool thing is you can also get a SWOT analysis based on your industry sector, which should help you to start thinking about that type of information as you go through. Also available to you, Arlington Economic Development subscribes to CoStar, which lists all of the available leasable space, commercial leasable space in the DC metro area. What's cool about that is not only if you're looking for a location or need to identify a location, we can help with that, but it also gives you foot traffic, street traffic, demographics, psychographics of people that are in the region. Also, George Mason GMU that's here, their School of Public Policy, has access to all kinds of wonderful reports based on industry sector that being here in this area you can utilize and access. There will also be a wealth of networking opportunities that we have coming up between now and the holiday season. So we hope you check out our website, which there is the hyperlink for Arlington Economic Development. I also encourage a number of folks to access the economic development agencies for the communities that you're looking to do business in. A lot of the statistics which will touch on your target markets can be found there. The jurisdictions do a lot of economic research. They look at the regional economy, and they can let you know a lot of great specific information about a community that you're going into. So not only do I encourage you to take a look at AED's information, but also DC, Washington metropolitan area, economic development offices are a great way to get some really good information. And a lot of this information is out there, but I think in touch with what you were saying, Joe, you really need to be as specific as possible and fine-tune it, because it takes a lot of this data and just flushes it out and gives you exactly the information that you need.
Right. And one of the things that I point out on this is you got to keep things in perspective. Depending on the size of business that you're doing, most startups are going to be constrained by their operational resources than they are going to be what share of the market they can cover or capture. So in that respect, I would spend less time doing the market research aspect, just do a reality check. Hey, there is a market out there and it's a fairly tight market or a fairly loose market. Get that level of detail. But then not go into a tremendous number of pages of effort of defining a market when you're really talking about getting a very small slice anyway. So you keep things in perspective. No
dissertations, 100-page papers.
Now, some of the things like the CoStar report make that pretty easy for you to do too, because then, for example, you may pick different locations you're looking at. You may get different CoStar reports. And then from there, as I remember, that gives you the, within a 1, 3, and 5-mile radius of that location, things like the demographics of those that live there, but also demographics of the people that work there.
Yes.
So those two combined give you a very good insight to what the potential market is. That may be sufficient detail for you. Then you wouldn't have to necessarily go into and hire, for example, a market research of that neighborhood.
That's right, which could be costly.
Right. And all of this, and most of everything we're talking about here is basically something that can be done free of charge through either subscription at Arlington or by coming in and talking to the resource partners. Most of this information is available to you without fee.
And I always like to say that free is a good 4-letter word.
It is. It is. It is.
There are good 4-letter words.
Probably the most important one for a startup.
I think so, for a startup business. Which leads us right into Q&A. So we will reach out to you all that are on the line. If you have some burning questions for us to answer, please do so now. We're looking forward to getting your questions. I know I've been working with multiple people, and what I would say, Joe, is that something, you know, people say, well, I have this window of time that I need to do my business plan. How do I stay in touch with making sure that I, you know, reach those milestones with my business planning? And I would say put everything on the calendar.
Yeah, I mean, I would use like if you have access to a project management tool, then I'd use that and do a breakdown of the work that needs to be done and use that to manage it just as you would any project that you're delivering for a customer. Now, absent project management software, then things like posting different milestones on your calendar and putting reminders in there for those as appointments is a valuable way of, but you do that very much so need to hold yourself to a deliverable schedule. And otherwise you will find more than enough reasons to put it off and never do it.
That's right.
And you'll never get there.
That's right. All right, Melissa, we're going to you to see if we've got any questions on the line.
Great. Yes, we received a few questions, so I'll just start with the first one. I know you've talked about a few of the free resources there are for business writing your business plan, but what would you expect to spend on business plan development?
Yeah, let me just take a moment to hit another point I missed in this that I'd like to answer on that. Most people will say, if you do a search on the web, you're going to find a number of things available to you. There's software available that will write your business plan for you. You plug in the values and it creates a plan for you. There are companies that will write your business plan for you. And I always recommend, after you stop and think of what a business plan is, this is your plan for what you're going to do for your company. I would not spend any money. I would not buy that service. Now, if you want to buy a service to take your thought process and convert it or polish it and make it into a professional document, that's fine. That's editing services. My recommendation is never hire anybody to write your business plan for you. This has got to be your plan for what you're going to do for your business, and you should not spend any of your money in hiring somebody to do that for you. You may have somebody, you could spend a minimal amount of money to have somebody edit it and polish it, but don't spend any money to have anybody do it for you.
I hate to say this, but a lot of people that I've worked with that have hired an agency have gotten burned.
Yeah.
Just because they end up writing it anyway because they're just regurgitating the information that they already have.
In order to have the business plan be reflective of what you're trying to do and make sense, it's going to be your thought process. So what you're doing is you're hiring somebody else to put the words together for your thought process.
That's right.
That's a different animal. That's more editing than it is hiring somebody to write your business plan for you.
I guess I could do a shameless plug for us that we're here to take a look whenever you want to have anybody review your plan.
Right.
You come and see us, and we'd be more than happy to.
Right, and the emphasis we put on, we help review it, we help critique it, but we don't write it for them. Okay.
Shameless disclaimer.
Right.
All right, Melissa?
Okay, great. We have another question that asks, what are a few tips you'd give to a startup global education and training business where no products are sold, but services are the output?
I'd say you follow the same thought process. Services are exactly the same as products in the sense that you have a value proposition you have to identify. What problem are you solving for your customers with the services that you're offering? Given that, you then can also try and establish what value, what price should you put for that. That establishes the transaction, the product, the service that you're offering is that transaction, and then everything else as far as who the competition is, who the target market is, what the sales projection, all the same things fall through just as the same as you would with a product. So the same process applies whether it's a product or service.
Could you give any examples? Or?
Sure. My biggest one that I'm familiar with is consulting services. It's all a service, and we sell hours of consulting, or we sell engagements where we'll do a study for a particular price over a particular period of performance. So, but in any service, you are defining what it is that you're offering. You're packaging it in a way that allows you to put a price to that. Either it's a firm fixed price of a level of service you're offering, or it's a what we call labor hour, where a particular rate per hour, and the customer then agrees with you on how many hours are going to be done.
That makes sense.
But any service that you're offering can be packaged, if you will, to something that has a relatable price to it.
Okay. Sounds great.
Okay, great. Thank you. How long do you think a business plan should be in order for it to be most effective?
Yeah, I always resist this question, but I'll answer. You know, a lot of it depends on how much money you're looking for. If it's a business plan that's requiring some funding, for example. And I would say if it goes anywhere over 30 pages, you're going to lose people. They won't read it. The executive summary I maintain cannot be more than a page or to a page and a half. But if you're going for a reasonable amount of money, then the business plan probably is going to be 20 to 30 pages, including the financial statements. That's as close to a rule of thumb as I'd be willing to give.
Yeah.
If you're going for more than that, then obviously you're still going to have the main part of the business plan pretty concise, but then you're going to have a number of very detailed appendices. If you're going for a small amount of money, the business plan might be able to be done in 10 pages. So it goes relative to the amount of funding that you're looking for.
And if you're an existing business and you're looking to branch out, that could be like a 10-page strategic plan on a particular area.
If the business plan is going to somebody that is familiar with you and knows your business, then yes, I would agree on that. If you're going to somebody brand new, then you're probably going to need some more number of pages in there for the background and details.
That makes sense.
Okay, great. Thank you. Our next one is, if you are writing your business plan for an investor, what are the most important things that they're looking for?
Yeah, the investor's got a rule that they're going to try and get 10 times the value of their investment returned to them over 5 years. Now, they don't get that on everyone, but that's what they're shooting for. So their primary focus is, how am I going to get that return on investment? And what type of market growth, what type of market penetration is going to make something that will allow them to do that. So therefore, the market analysis, the competitive analysis, that's the key factor to them. And they'll do the math and look at the numbers and see what they can do for cost, containing the cost along the way, and see if this is a realistic focus on them.
And so with investing, they also look at how you're set up, correct? Like if the ownership, partnership.
Yeah, the investors want, well, two things. They want visibility into the decision-making of the business, and they want ease of getting money in and out. That's going to drive them to wanting you to be a C corporation versus an LLC. And they will probably not consider you as an LLC because there's just not enough visibility in there, and it's too difficult to get their money out of there. They're looking for the exit strategy that you have, and how are you going to, what's the liquidating moment that lets them get their money back.
Gotcha. All right, Melissa, any other questions?
I think that was about it that was asked online.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have this last slide, one of the last slides that we have. If you need additional support as you're working on your business plan, you want to have a mentor, someone to talk about, someone to speak with, we've got Joe Clark, who's available here. He's here on Tuesdays from 9 to 4. And the local SCORE chapter, which has a wealth of resources and information available.
And then SCORE National also, if you just go to the SCORE.org portion, has a number of webinars and templates and tools available that can help you create the business plan also.
Great. And thank you. We really appreciate you spending the lunch hour with us. It wouldn't be a BizLaunch webinar if we didn't ask you to follow us at AED BizLaunch. Stay tuned. Joe will be following this webinar up with one where we go right into the details of the financials.
Right. Well, we're going to want to hit on that is, what are the three financial statements you need? How do you figure out what your break-even point is? And then talk a little bit about some tools that are available to help you create all these.
Oh, well, I'm looking forward to it on bated breath.
All right.
Thank you so much, Joe. And thank you all for participating. Have a wonderful day, and we look forward to seeing you at a BizLaunch webinar soon. Take care.